It was supposed to be just another routine morning at the Liberty Trust Bank in downtown Manhattan. Sunlight spilled across the marble floors. Customers stood in line, murmuring over receipts, tapping impatiently on their phones. And then, everything stopped. Security. Now! The voice cracked through the air like thunder. It came from the manager's office. Sharp, cold, and meant to be heard. At the center of it all stood a calm black woman in her early 40s. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't causing a scene. She wasn't even holding her phone. Just waiting. Her name was Naomi Reed. She wore a navy blue coat, a white blouse, and black slacks. Business casual. Nothing flashy. Her natural curls were pulled into a neat low bun, and in her hand was a withdrawal slip for $75,000. "I simply want to withdraw from my own account," she had told the teller. But now, 3 security guards were walking toward her. The teller, a young white woman named Amy, had gone pale. The manager, Sandra, had her arms crossed and her jaw locked. Her voice rang out again. "Get her out of here. She's stalling. We don't hand out that kind of money to people like her." Everything in the bank changed. The quiet hum of the lobby turned into stunned silence. A man pulled out his phone and hit record. Someone whispered, "What did she just say?" Naomi didn't move. Didn't even blink. "I've shown all required ID," she said quietly to the nearest guard, "and I've waited my turn like everyone else." "You're disturbing customers," Sandra barked. "You people always play victim the moment we question anything." Naomi's eyes narrowed, not in fear, but in something else. Something colder, steadier. One of the guards stepped closer. His hand hovered near her elbow. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." Naomi turned her head slightly, meeting his eyes. Her voice was calm. Calm in a way that only comes from someone who knows exactly what's about to happen. "Is that your final answer?" she asked. Sandra scoffed. "I don't owe you anything." Naomi gave a single nod, then slowly reached into her handbag. Every movement was deliberate, controlled. The security guards stiffened. Amy leaned back. Customers craned their necks to see. Phones angled closer. One child whispered to his mother, "What's going on?" The mother pulled him behind her, unsure. Naomi didn't pull out a weapon. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten anyone. She simply took out a sleek black phone, tapped the screen, and held it to her ear. Sandra rolled her eyes. "You can call whoever you want, lady. You're still not getting that kind of cash. Not today." Naomi didn't look at her. She spoke into the phone with quiet confidence. "Yes, I'm at the Liberty Trust Manhattan branch. It's exactly what we suspected." Pause. That's the manager speaking now. The air in the bank grew thick. It was like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Someone in line whispered, "What's happening?" The guard stepped back, uncertain now. Amy's hand trembled on the edge of her monitor. A man in a business suit lowered his phone and stared at Naomi with new curiosity. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't loud. And somehow, she wasn't afraid. Sandra took a step forward, still trying to command the moment. "Give me the phone. I'll explain exactly what's going on." Naomi finally looked her dead in the eyes. "That won't be necessary," she said. Another pause. Then, into the phone. 15 minutes. Understood. We'll be ready." She ended the call and calmly placed the phone back into her handbag. And that's when the shift happened. The guards no longer looked so sure. Amy turned to whisper something to her colleague. Sandra blinked. A small ripple moved through the crowd, like the tremor before a building falls. Naomi straightened her posture. "I'll wait right here." And she did. Still, calm, certain, while the entire branch froze. 2 days before that moment at the bank, Naomi Reed sat in a high-rise office, 13 floors above downtown Manhattan. Behind her, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a sweeping view of the city she helped shape, a place where power moved silently through glass towers and closed-door meetings. She wasn't dressed like a billionaire. No flashy watches, no towering heels, just clean lines, subtle earrings, and the quiet grace of a woman who didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Naomi was one of the few black women on the executive board of Liberty Trust, the very bank whose branch would soon treat her like a criminal. Across the mahogany conference table, a young VP scrolled through a PowerPoint. "Customer satisfaction is holding steady at 93%, he said confidently. "Minimal complaints this quarter, especially in branches servicing mid to high-tier accounts." Naomi raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. "Any questions?" the VP asked, beaming. No one spoke. Just nods, clicks of pens, approval. But Naomi's silence wasn't agreement. It was calculation. She had been receiving emails, not just numbers, stories, quiet, alarming stories from customers who looked like her, complaints about tone, body language, extra ID requests, delays, disrespect, always subtle, always deniable, but always the same. And something about it didn't sit right. That night, she sat on her apartment balcony sipping black tea. The city buzzed below, but her thoughts were quiet, focused. She didn't want data. She wanted truth. And truth doesn't show up in spreadsheets. So she made a decision. No black car, no assistant, no press release. She'd walk into one of Liberty's busiest branches alone, dressed like any working professional. No announcement, no title, no warning. She wanted to see what others had seen, feel what they felt. Not as Naomi Reed, board member, but as Naomi Reed, black woman. Tuesday morning came fast. She stepped out of a yellow cab, blending with the crowd. The bank towered above, glass, steel, power. She walked through the revolving doors like any other client. Inside, the lobby gleamed, white marble floors, chrome counters, minimalist elegance. A security guard gave her a quick glance and looked away. No smile. She took a number, sat quietly, watched. First, a white man in a navy blazer walked in, talking loudly on the phone. A teller saw him and waved. "Right this way, Mr. Chase." He was escorted to a private desk. No waiting. Next, an older Asian couple approached the counter, confused by the machine. The teller barely looked up. "Please take a seat and wait to be called," she said flatly. Naomi didn't miss it. A Latino man stepped forward to cash a $600 check. The teller asked for 2 forms of ID, the issuing business contact, and then left for 10 minutes to verify something. Naomi watched every second. Then her number was called. She stood, calm and steady, and walked to the counter. "Hi, I'd like to withdraw $75,000 from my personal checking," she said, placing her ID and bank card on the counter. The teller, Amy, smiled briefly, then paused. Her eyes scanned the ID, then Naomi's face, then the amount again, and the smile vanished. "Let me just get a supervisor," Amy said, already nervous. Naomi didn't flinch. She simply nodded. She'd seen enough. The storm was coming, but she had walked into it. On purpose. Naomi stood patiently at the teller window, her ID and withdrawal slip already in front of Amy. The amount, $75,000, wasn't unusual for someone with her balance, but the way Amy stared at the paperwork told Naomi everything. Not once had she looked Naomi in the eye since reading the amount. Instead, Amy leaned slightly back, her eyes scanning every detail of the ID, then flicking up to Naomi's face, then back down again, as if waiting for something not to match. "You said 75,000?" Amy asked, her tone careful, but clearly unsure. "Yes," Naomi replied evenly. "It's for a real estate transaction. The funds are in checking." Amy nodded, but didn't move. "Would you like a certified check instead?" she offered, voice a little higher now. "Number cash." That made Amy blink. Not just because of the amount, but because Naomi didn't flinch when she said it. Amy glanced toward the next desk. A man in a maroon tie stood with crossed arms, watching. "Greg," she called. Greg Harris, senior teller, 10 years in, walked over. "What's the issue?" "She's requesting a $75,000 cash withdrawal," Amy said quietly, tilting the slip toward him. Greg didn't even read it. He looked straight at Naomi. There was something in his eyes that wasn't curiosity. It was something colder, something already decided. "Do you have an appointment for this?" he asked. "I wasn't aware cash withdrawals needed one," Naomi replied. Greg's eyes narrowed. "They usually don't, but large amounts do raise red flags." "It's not a red flag," Naomi said, still calm. "It's my account." Greg took the ID and card from Amy, held them up to the light like he was examining a counterfeit bill, and then turned to his monitor. Naomi waited. She could feel the shift in the air. Clients behind her started noticing the silence. A man stepped to another teller and glanced at her. Amy leaned in toward Greg and whispered something. Naomi caught only 3 words. She walked in alone. Greg straightened. "I'll need to verify the source of these funds," he said loudly. Naomi's brow raised. "You have my account open. You can see the deposit history." "Yes, but we've had a lot of fraud lately, especially with situations like this." "Situations like what?" Naomi asked, her voice slightly lower now. Greg paused, then gave a little shrug. "You know," he said, nodding vaguely. "Unusual withdrawals. Unexpected activity." Naomi leaned forward just slightly. "My name is on that account. My balance is above $500,000. There is nothing unusual here except how I'm being treated." Greg cleared his throat. "We're just following policy." Behind her, someone whispered, "Why is it taking so long?" Another pulled out a phone. Naomi heard the soft click of a camera shutter. Amy tried to defuse the moment. "It's just protocol. We're required to double-check identities." "No, you're not," Naomi interrupted gently. "Not like this." Greg stiffened. "Ma'am, we can't process this without proper confirmation. I gave you 2 forms of ID, a debit card, and I'm standing right in front of you. What more confirmation do you need?" Greg's voice turned cold. "Proof of where the money came from." Naomi blinked, slowly. "You want me to explain to you how I earned my own money?" A few gasps came from behind her. People were now openly watching. Greg straightened his tie and said, "If you're not willing to verify the source, we may need to involve bank security." Amy turned her head slightly, avoiding Naomi's eyes. Naomi said nothing. Her silence was louder than any argument. That's when the manager came out. Sandra Miller walked with sharp heels and a sharper attitude. She took one look at the screen, then at Naomi, then made her voice loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. "This transaction looks suspicious. We'll need to put a hold on it." "No, you won't," Naomi said. Sandra ignored her and looked at Amy. "Who approved this?" she snapped. "No one yet," Amy replied. "Good," Sandra said. "Then freeze it and call security." Greg hesitated. "Shouldn't we—" "I said freeze it!" Customers around them stirred. A man in a suit pulled out his phone. A woman holding a toddler took a step back. Naomi reached slowly into her purse. The nearest guard stepped forward, hand twitching. "Don't do that," Sandra snapped. "She hasn't even explained why she needs the money." "I don't owe you an explanation," Naomi said. "Oh, really?" Sandra replied, sarcasm sharp. "A walk-in customer, no appointment, asking for $75,000 in cash. No explanation, no record. That doesn't sound normal to you?" Naomi locked eyes with her. "I'm black, not suspicious." A hush fell over the lobby. Sandra flinched, but masked it with a smirk. "Get her out of here," she ordered. That's when the crowd really took notice. Phones came up. Recording lights blinked on. Naomi stood tall. She didn't resist. She didn't yell. She just looked Sandra in the face and said, "Are you sure you want this on video?" Sandra didn't respond to Naomi's warning. She just turned to the guards and waved her hand like she was brushing away a problem. "Escort her outside. Let her call whoever she wants from the sidewalk." The taller guard stepped forward and reached for Naomi's arm. But before his hand made contact, Naomi reached calmly into her bag. No panic, no hesitation, just precise movement. Out came the phone. Sleek. Black. Professional. She tapped one number, held it to her ear. The lobby watched, frozen. No one stopped filming. "No, I'm still here," she said into the phone, her voice steady. "They've refused the transaction. Manager just called security." Pause. "Yes, Sandra Miller. That's the nameplate on her chest." The silence grew heavier. Sandra folded her arms, still pretending not to care. "I don't care who you're calling," she said. "This is protocol. You're lucky I haven't had your account frozen." Naomi didn't flinch. She locked eyes with Sandra and spoke into the phone again. 15 minutes? Got it. I'll wait right here." She ended the call and placed the phone on the counter, gently. Then she looked at Greg, then Amy, then back at Sandra. "I suggest you inform your district supervisor that this branch will be receiving visitors shortly." Sandra snorted. "Are you threatening me now?" Naomi tilted her head. "Not at all. I'm giving you a chance to prepare." Greg shifted uncomfortably. Amy opened her mouth to speak but said nothing. Even the guards looked confused now. Phones were still up. A teenage boy whispered, "Yo!" "I think something big's about to happen." Naomi folded her hands calmly on the counter. "I'll wait right here." For a few minutes, no one moved. Then the elevator dinged. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the lobby like a bomb. All heads turned. A man in a tailored navy blue suit stepped out. Tall, clean-shaven, face tight with focus. He walked like every step had weight, like every second mattered. Michael Roberts, Senior Vice President of Liberty Trust, second only to the board. Sandra's jaw fell open slightly. Her hands slowly came together in front of her, fingers lacing nervously. Greg stepped back. Amy gasped. Michael didn't slow. He walked straight to Naomi, eyes scanning the lobby as he passed each employee. "Ms. Reed," he said, his voice calm but sharp with tension. "I came as quickly as I could." "Thank you, Michael," Naomi replied evenly. Greg blinked. "Wait, Ms. Reed?" Sandra tried to recover. "Mr. Roberts, I had no idea this woman was—" He held up a hand. "Stop talking." The words silenced the room. Michael turned to the crowd of customers and raised his voice just enough. "The woman standing before you is Naomi Reed, senior board member, and one of the key architects behind Liberty Trust's success for the past 20 years. The lobby fell into stunned silence. No one breathed. Sandra went pale. Greg sat down without realizing it. Amy backed away from the counter. Michael's voice was firm, unflinching. "And every person in this branch who judged her based on appearance, tone, or assumption has just made the gravest mistake of their career." Naomi said nothing. She didn't need to. The fear in their faces said it all. Sandra finally found her voice. "Mr. Roberts, I swear I didn't know—" "And that's exactly the problem," he snapped. "You didn't need to know who she was. You just needed to treat her like a human being, a customer, a professional. Instead, you insulted her in front of a crowd." He turned to Naomi. "I'm deeply sorry this happened. We'll be dealing with it immediately." Naomi nodded once. "I expected no less." And that's when every phone in the lobby caught the moment Sandra Miller, Liberty Trust branch manager, took one unsteady step backward and sat down, trembling. The lobby felt heavier than before. The stunned silence was replaced by low whispers and shifting feet. Naomi stood poised, but inside, a new battle was beginning, one that stretched far beyond the walls of this branch. Michael Roberts immediately pulled out his phone and dialed. "Get me the compliance team and the internal affairs unit on standby." He spoke with urgency, but there was no panic, only the cold professionalism of a man who knew the stakes. Minutes later, a small group of sharply dressed investigators arrived. They moved through the bank quietly, but with unmistakable authority. Sandra Miller tried to maintain composure, but her fingers trembled slightly. One of the investigators, a woman named Kelly, approached Naomi. "Ms. Reed, we're launching a full internal investigation into the incidents here today. Your testimony will be crucial." Naomi nodded. Kelly turned to the staff. "You will all be required to submit statements. No exceptions." The message was clear and chilling. Word quickly spread to the corporate headquarters. Within the sleek glass offices far above the city, an emergency board meeting was convened. Chairman Jonathan Davidson's expression was grave as he addressed the directors. "We have a situation that threatens our reputation and the trust of millions of customers. We cannot allow this to go unchecked." A security officer entered, handing over a tablet displaying live footage from the Manhattan branch. Everyone watched silently as Naomi faced down the staff who had humiliated her. Jonathan's voice was steady, but filled with restrained anger. "This isn't just about one branch. It's about the culture we tolerate. We must root out every trace of discrimination." Meanwhile, back at the branch, the tension was palpable. Employees who had once acted with arrogance now shuffled nervously. Amy Bennett sat quietly, avoiding eye contact. Greg Harris paced, rubbing his temples. Sandra Miller stared blankly at the floor, trapped by the consequences of her own actions. Michael returned to Naomi's side. "We will ensure this doesn't happen again, but we must be thorough." Naomi's gaze was calm but resolute. "I expect nothing less." Later that day, official statements were drafted. Calls were made to regulatory agencies. Emails went out demanding immediate compliance with anti-discrimination policies. The wheels of corporate justice began to turn. Outside, news outlets caught wind of the story. Reporters gathered near the branch, cameras poised. Social media exploded with clips of the confrontation. Hashtags like #Justice for Naomi and #Banking while Black trended nationwide. The pressure on Liberty Trust was immense. Sandra, Greg, and Amy found themselves under a microscope. Their lives, once filled with routine, now felt invaded by shame and uncertainty. Each was called into separate interviews. Each struggled to justify what had happened. But the evidence was clear. Racism had been allowed to fester. And now it would face consequences. Naomi watched it all unfold with quiet determination. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for every person who had been told, in subtle or blatant ways, that they didn't belong. And she knew the battle was far from over. But for the first time, the system was on notice. The day justice arrived, the entire Liberty Trust branch felt like a stage set for reckoning. Naomi stood at the center, calm and steady, as the weight of months of silence, discrimination, and neglect finally came crashing down. Security officers led Sandra Miller, Greg Harris, and Amy Bennett into the lobby, badges stripped, faces pale with shame. The room fell silent. Every customer, every employee watched as the three former bank employees stood before Naomi, once full of arrogance, now diminished and exposed. Sandra's eyes darted nervously. She looked around, desperate for support, but found only cold stares. Greg's hands trembled, and he swallowed hard as his past confidence crumbled. Amy's eyes welled with tears, and she wiped them hastily, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Naomi's voice cut through the silence, low but firm. "The behavior you displayed is intolerable." She stepped forward, each word deliberate. "You humiliated me, a loyal client and board member. You betrayed the trust we all owe each other." Sandra swallowed, trying to speak, but Naomi raised a hand to stop her. "This is not just about me. It is about every person who has been made to feel less than human in this bank." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Naomi continued, "I have spent my career building this institution, and I will not allow it to stand on the backs of prejudice and fear." Turning to Michael Roberts, she nodded. He took the microphone from the podium and addressed the crowd with a voice both steady and commanding. "Effective immediately, Sandra Miller, Greg Harris, and Jason Collins are terminated for gross misconduct and blatant racial discrimination." Gasps filled the room. The name Jason Collins echoed, another employee caught in the scandal. Michael's eyes swept the crowd. Liberty Trust is committed to restoring trust through transparency, diversity training, and strict enforcement of equality policies. He looked at Naomi. "We will make this right." Sandra stumbled backward, her pride shattered. Greg slumped into a chair, his career in ruins. Jason Collins, absent but not forgotten, faced public scorn and lost all chances for redemption. Phones everywhere recorded the moment. It would be replayed countless times. Outside the bank, protesters gathered. Signs read, "Justice for Naomi," and "No more racism in our banks." Media vans swarmed the scene. Naomi gave interviews, her calm strength inspiring thousands. She spoke not only of her experience, but of the systemic changes required. Her words ignited a movement. Within weeks, Liberty Trust announced sweeping reforms. Mandatory anti-racism training, anonymous reporting channels, and a new diversity board were created. Employees who once turned a blind eye began to speak out. Change, long overdue, was finally underway. Naomi's story spread across social media, becoming a beacon for those fighting injustice nationwide. For the first time in a long time, the silent voices of the oppressed were heard loud and clear. And as Naomi stood on a stage at a national forum, her voice unwavering, she said, "We cannot change what we refuse to see. But when we stand together, we can rewrite the story." The crowd erupted in applause. Her fight was far from over. But victory, at last, felt within reach. Weeks after the storm had passed, Naomi found herself walking again through the polished marble floors of Liberty Trust's Manhattan branch. But this time, something was different. The air was lighter. The tension had lifted. Employees greeted her with respectful nods and quiet smiles. The same lobby where she had once faced suspicion and scorn now held a different energy, one of recognition and newfound respect. Naomi paused near the teller counter. The manager on duty, a woman named Lisa, stepped out from behind the desk. Without hesitation, Lisa extended her hand. "Welcome back, Ms. Reed," she said warmly. "How can we assist you today?" Naomi smiled, shaking the offered hand. "Just here to do some banking," she replied softly. Around her, customers and staff watched quietly, some whispering. They had witnessed the change, not just in policy, but in hearts. Naomi walked calmly to her usual window. She took a deep breath and looked around. The cameras were gone, the murmurs replaced by an atmosphere of healing. She thought of the battles fought and the victories won. But she also knew the journey was far from over. Outside, the city hummed with life. But inside, Naomi felt a quiet peace. She remembered the faces of those who had doubted her, the managers who had laughed at her, the tellers who had whispered behind her back. And she knew that their stories, too, had changed. Her courage had sparked something bigger than herself. A movement, a call to justice that could not be silenced. As she stepped out of the bank into the bright sunlight, Naomi lifted her face to the sky. For a moment, she closed her eyes, feeling the warmth on her skin. A gentle reminder that even in the darkest places, light finds a way. She smiled, because she was no longer just a customer. She was a symbol, a leader, and a reminder that dignity and respect are not privileges to be earned. They are rights to be demanded. And with that, Naomi walked forward, ready for whatever came next.